Times published an article about what happened in the hours of the massacre on October 7th of last year, while Palestinians, Hamas and others were had invaded Israel, were slaughtering people, were torturing people, were raping, were taking hostages, were burning people alive. What Israel was doing and how Israel reacted. Now, Israel was very clearly um, caught off guard, not just in the sense that this happened when it happened, but in the sense that it happened at all. Israel lived in some sort of illusion that this can't happen, that what it's getting, the worst things that's going to come from Gaza are rockets, maybe the occasional terrorist makes his way through, but something like this, an invasion, multiple parts of the barrier, the fence between Gaza and Israel, this was unimaginable. Um, and as you can expect, um, basically the immediate instructions that the IDF had given were um, different from what they usually have. So according to the New York Times, in the immediate well, while this was going on, Israel was allowing the IDF to bomb in Gaza, even if up to 20 civilians die in each bombing. Remember, this is during the attack and in attempts to prevent it. And when it came to Hamas leaders, it was up to 100 people who could die in such an attack, and Israel would allow it. Now, after this was published in the New York Times, the IDF said, or when it was published, the IDF said we were facing an unprecedented attack. We tried to do everything according to international law, and this is so. Of course, something like this comes out in the New York Times, and as you would expect, people are saying, "Oh, wow, Israel was basically saying it's okay to kill civilians." And Israel, as you would expect, is being apologetic and saying, well, what could we have done? We were in this situation and so on, and we still tried to minimize casualties. What Israel is doing by saying this, um, first of all, it is explaining how Hamas has essentially, and certainly the Palestinian people have gotten away with it. They've gotten away with October 7th. Yeah, there's damage to Hamas's military capabilities at the moment, but the people are are fine, and the people in Judea and Samaria haven't, or the West Bank haven't paid for it at all. But what it's also saying is in future attacks, and we know future attacks are coming, as long as the previous attacks aren't, aren't punished to future attacks is just saying, future Hamas leaders, when you do an October 7th style attack, make sure you have 101 civilians in the building with you so that the IDF doesn't do anything, no matter what. Remember, we've spoken about on this channel. It's been widely reported how the original plan for the attack wasn't just from Gaza. It was going to be from Lebanon as well. It was going to be with Hezbollah. Sinwar kind of jumped the gun, didn't tell anybody that he was planning to do this on October 7th. And Hezbollah saw that happening and then saw the U.S. move an aircraft carrier and decided not to take part. Had Hezbollah taken part, and anything Hamas can do, Hezbollah can do 10 times stronger, or could do back then. Israel still would have had this policy, and this policy would have meant Israel not only lost the war, but lost it in what would have resulted in so many Israeli deaths and an inability to regain control of territories lost. So, yeah, it appears that while a lot of what Israel has done, especially in the last 6 months or so, deserves praise, and I think the situation in the Middle East is far better now for Israel than it was before October 7th. Um, it's really, really the lesson hasn't been learned by Israel. The lesson of who the enemy is, how to deal with the enemy hasn't been learned, and whatever achievements Israel has made during the war so far, they will just postpone the future attack. But the blueprint for how to make the next attack more successful has been given by Israel to its enemies. Welcome to the Daily Objective. Daniel, your thoughts on this New York Times report?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, let's talk about the idea of international law and how, Israel tried to comply with it. And now people are saying that Israeli rules of engagement were too harsh or were against international law or whatever you want to say. And again, now I'm not going to defend international law, but even international law allows, like, international law doesn't say never kill civilians. Even that has like specific, but no one cares. It's all about how can you attack Israel, and you can say this magical word international law without actually specifying what you mean exactly, and somehow it always works against Israel. So that's like a first thing. Like, and even if you wanna apply it, because the fact is that yeah, Israeli rules of engagement were changed after October 7th for a little bit. Then I believe they were pretty much rolled back. So they were already set in a certain way that even IDF acknowledged that wasn't good enough to basically protect Israelis. Like you had, what is the point of these rules of engagement when they, on purpose, they pretty much prevent you from actually defending yourself from when it comes to, it is really sort of like, as long as the conflict is small, we can trade lives of our soldiers and of our citizens for the enemy. But when it gets too dangerous, then we'll change it so we no longer sacrifice our own people. I mean, it's ridiculous. No matter what state you're in, it doesn't. I don't really see any reason for changing or sort of tightening the rules of engagement just because it's not too bad right now. It really, there is only one goal of the IDF. It's the protection of its citizens, or of Israel, and yeah. So this whole thing is, I mean, ridiculous and sort of like. I recently watched a debate between Cenk Uygur and Destiny, and you could see from that debate the way Cenk was arguing exactly this idea. Like there is nothing Israel could do that would like suddenly like make it good in Cenk's eyes. It's at some point he brought up like how many bombs were dropped on Israel, or sorry, on Gaza, and sort of like proportionally per bomb that was dropped, how many Gazan civilians were killed. It's less than one. Less than one Gazan civilian was killed by a drop bomb, by a bomb that was dropped. I mean, this genocide is gonna take a long time if we're gonna go by this state. Like it's really ridiculous. So and you could bring up every single thing like this. You could bring up the fact that so little civilians died comparatively, but again, it doesn't matter. It absolutely doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if what Israeli rules of engagement are. It wouldn't matter if Israel only somehow managed to almost exclusively kill Hamas militants, because we've seen that Israeli pager attack operation on Hezbollah almost exclusively targeted Hezbollah members, but there were some casualties. But the casualties were so little comparatively. Like you couldn't get, like realistically, you couldn't get, even in Plato's World of Forms, you couldn't get the numbers that like IDF was getting in Hezbollah. Yet that was immediately said that this was too much. This was against international law. This was crazy. So I think that's one thing Israel has to realize, and I talked a little bit about it yesterday, that the standard is that Israel cannot defend itself. So it doesn't matter if Israel says, but we do it carefully. We make sure that not many Palestinians or innocent Palestinians die. That there is no humanitarian crisis. We deliver food. Oftentimes you have people arguing for it. It doesn't matter. Because that's not the fundamental issue. You always have to look what's the fundamental issue. And fundamental issue here is Israel just shouldn't engage in war. That's it. It doesn't matter how much it tries to sort of be as little damage to the people that actually support this war.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that genocide will take a long time. No, because that's the thing. You just redefine genocide however you want. Yeah, if Israel actually wanted to kill all Palestinians, first of all, if it decided that that is militarily what's needed, that is not a genocide. But this is far from what Israel wants. By the way, it's interesting to see it's always interesting to see the trolls in the chat. But one of them is saying, "What IDF protected Palestinians? Where do you get your information from? IDF?" Well, we get our information from what we can see going on in the war. Even if we look at Hamas numbers, Hamas death toll, which we know is fabricated, and we've been over that many times on this show. We're not gonna relitigate that, but even if you look at that, that is proof that Israel is going out of its way to protect Palestinians. The fact that the Palestinians are still able to fight is proof Israel has the military capability to completely wipe out Gaza. It has the military capability to kill, leaders and terrorists when they're surrounded by civilians, and it doesn't. It has the ability to destroy and had the ability to destroy on October 7th. At the very least, every hospital and school in Gaza, knowing that that is where these people are hiding, and maybe every UNRWA building. So yeah, we know that Israel is protecting Palestinians because otherwise they would no longer be fighting, and that's the thing. And
Yeah, I
when
mean, just quickly
yeah,
on that, because we've done many episodes about the fact that you can find a lot of information about the numbers that Hamas itself publishes, because you can find a lot of interesting observations. And my favorite observation is the fact when people say 80% of Gaza has been destroyed. So Israel has destroyed 80% of Gaza, yet has killed 2% of the population. And again, this is all according to Hamas numbers. It's almost like IDF is bombing empty buildings because it says to the people, get out of the building before you bomb them. So and again, and you can bring up, like, this is not like a secret thing. This is like people, like, it is not a secret that Hamas uses human shields. It is not a secret that IDF is minimizing like Palestinian casualties. Yet it doesn't matter. You either, people will either deny it because Jews are diabolical. So of course they just wanna eat Palestinians probably, or it's straight up it's not enough. So
yeah. So in this New York Times article, it says that on October 7th, the IDF changed its rules of engagement and bombed what was considered one of the most intensive aerial bombardments in modern warfare. I don't know what exactly that means. I don't know if the people writing that know what it means, but basically, there were thousands of targets in Gaza that normally would not be approved because it's not senior officials, but junior officials or whatever in Hamas and Gaza. So those targets were approved, and different places were bombed that otherwise wouldn't be bombed. And maybe in some cases they didn't call them up and say we're going to bomb you. Of course, all that changed pretty much immediately. This was while Palestinians were slaughtering Jews at this is the same time. This is not after the massacre was stopped. So yeah, this is something that the IDF, even for the very short period of time that it did this, um, this was not enough. The rules of engagement were still a problem because if you are going to try to minimize civilian casualties, and if before the number of civilians was usually that Israel allowed for to bomb targets where the number of civilians that could potentially end up dead was five, or if it's a senior leader, then 10. And now it was 20, but if it's a senior leader, it's 100. You are still putting restrictions on your ability to prevent uh, the other side from continuing to slaughter your civilians. So again, this is so uh, backwards and upside down at the same time that the IDF is seeing this, apologizing for it, and apologizing to the world that wants Israel gone, rather than apologizing to Israelis for saying, "Look, we should not be protecting Palestinians. That is not our job. Their only goal is to slaughter you, Israeli citizens. So our job is to prevent them for that at any cost, certainly to them, uh, and to us, because that's what the IDF exists for. But yeah, I think we're a long time from, a long way away from seeing that kind of policy happen. We'll continue to advocate for it, but I don't see it happening, and I see the consequences of it not happening. Um, yeah, coming back to bite us.
Yeah, I mean, just quickly, someone in the chat says, Daniel, if you have the courage, and I know you are, how to justify looking for a hostage deal after 14 months of fighting? Guys, read your sentences after you write them, because it's much clearer to understand what you say. But I don't justify looking for a hostage deal. There is no justification for looking for a hostage deal. It's as close to surrendering as you can get. It's saying, no, we want to negotiate with terrorists. We want terrorists to survive another day. We want to release terrorists. So no, I don't justify it. I don't think there is any reason. Uh, and then, this idea of like Israel, the bombing of Gaza is the biggest in modern history. Again, it shows how Israel literally cannot do right. If it enters Rafah without evacuating civilians, then it's doing civilian casualties, and it's there is a lot of it's disproportionate or whatever. And if it tries to evacuate all people from Rafah, then it's moving people around. It's ethnically cleansing them from one area to another. And this is the same way. If IDF bombs a lot, which the reason for it is, and also why the tons of bombs is so far, is because they're trying to destroy the tunnels. They're trying to actually like destroy the whole infrastructure, which is usually targeting tunnels is much harder than just destroying buildings on the ground. And again, it's the biggest bombing in modern history, and yet 2% people died across 14 months, across and even taking Hamas numbers, which to what extent, and 2% is not even according to Hamas, 2% is not civilians. So again, like how can like Israel? There is no way of Israel doing right. Like it's always gonna be there's always two ways to take it. It's always as I said with Rafa, it's they're committing genocide when they do it, and they are committing genocide when they don't do it. So uh, I mean, what do you want to do? It almost sounds like they just want Israel to surrender itself.
Yeah. Thank you, Bonnie, for the super chat. And to trolls that are begging us to read your comments, don't beg. You can send a super chat. Now, that doesn't guarantee that we're going to read it. Especially, I mean, with a troll comment, we will, read it and judge based on that. But yeah, we don't work for you. We sometimes read your stuff because, mostly because it highlights where the anti-Israel crowd is and what it is, and I think that's important to highlight. And yeah, I see that there's less comments from non-trolls today. I don't know what it is, but and it took like 15 minutes for the first comments. I don't know. I don't fully understand how YouTube decides. And no, last troll who said I'm not begging, I was referring to a different troll. But yeah, like I said, you people are working hard today. Yeah. Look. Uh, First of all, the bombing campaign. I remember hearing stories that from people in Israel saying on the night of October 7th, the night between the 7th and 8th, that they heard bombings of from Gaza like they've never heard before. Um, which is nice. But again, yeah, you talk about 80% of Gaza is destroyed. If they talk about 80% of the buildings in Gaza, um, that's not good enough. The people who did the massacres can rebuild. They can live in tents. They can still kill. The buildings don't kill. The buildings themselves are fine. You know, if you had some sort of bomb that left the building intact, I mean, these aren't great buildings, so maybe we're doing them a favor. But if you had bombs that left the building intact and just killed the terrorists, I'd be all for that. Unlike, you know, the Palestinians who, when Israel did the disengagement and took out by force, speaking of moving populations by force, took out all the Jews, made Gaza Jew-free. Um, they left some pretty good infrastructure there, and the Palestinians were like, no, this is Jew infrastructure, so we're not going to use it, and destroyed everything. So yeah, I my my problem is not with the buildings, it is with the Palestinian people, and I wish Israel understands that that is their enemy before it's too late to understand that and act accordingly.
Yeah, I mean, we have a super chat. Do you wanna read that?
Sure, I usually like to read them before I read them out to see if they're, but this is Christian, so thank you, Christian, for the super chat. I'm going to trust that it's something that you know, I won't regret reading. Uh, the whole thing is ridiculous. The Western world has forgotten how to win wars. Adding to that, the postmodernist destruction of the universities, the lies, hatred, and disinformation on social media, a recipe for future mayhem. Yes, absolutely. I mentioned I'm in a city that was destroyed in such a war when the West. Um, the last time the West fought properly, yeah, it's a different army that bombed this city, as Daniel pointed out, but still, you know, yeah, and again, you saw real uh, savagery from Germany, from Japan, and you saw them pay for it, not just in terms of all their weapons being destroyed and their buildings being destroyed, but they were killed. Many of them were killed, and their culture was completely destroyed as it should have been. And look at them now. They are two of the best countries in the world. So again, there's no guarantee that that's what will happen with the Palestinians, but there is a guarantee that if the Palestinians um, gain something from October 7th, they will take that as a lesson that doing it again and again, as their leadership has promised, is a good thing for them.
Yeah, j just quickly to correct. Allied forces did bomb Berlin. It's I think because I mentioned it yesterday. It was that the Soviets were the ones to capture Berlin. Uh, but yeah, I mean, talking. We have someone in the chat talking about like October 7 being an inside job, and this is again the sort of like thing like Israel cannot do right. If IDF is working too well, if it's too successful in Hezbollah, in Syria, in Gaza, then it's wrong. And if it fails in some ways, like on October 7th, then also that's wrong. It is really like conspiracism, like conspiracy minded, conspiracy like epistemology. Like there is no reality, there is no truth, there is no thing you're looking for. There is you have a certain things, which in this case are evil Jews or diabolical Jews, and so every single thing that happens is somehow work. It's sort of like when people say Trump does 4D chess. Like every single thing he does is 4D chess. If it's like if it's a good thing, then it's a good thing, and if it's like bad thing, well, it's just he's just playing around so we can do it. And it's the same way with for these people with the Jews. If it's a good, then yeah, they're controlling it. And if it's something that goes against Israel, even when people mention like how many civilians, how many Palestinian civilians die, or when some people try to sort of fight it by saying, well, if Israel is committing genocide, why did they not kill more Palestinians? Then it's like, well, because they are trying to hide it, so they need to keep the number. They need to do it gradually. They cannot just do it all at once. And it's like again, you cannot win. Like your reality is not the standard, when your epistemology is completely dog shit, I mean, honestly enough, then yeah, I mean, there is no way to talk to you. There is no way to convince you of something else. You can only convince people who have reality as their standard, who have some uh, they have some principles, something you can lock onto and build a foundation on that and sort of argue from that perspective. But when it's Israel is wrong, or Jews are evil, or Jews are wrong, and that's your axiom, there is nothing I can say.
Lorisetto is upset with your swearing, Daniel. I think this is the new Daniel. I think he started his New Year's resolution a few weeks early, and it is to swear at least once or once. It's always once at
Yeah.
every episode.
I was about to do a Kanye rap. I am the new Daniel. But yeah, I won't do that.
Yeah, I don't know about the rapping, but yeah, speaking of rapping, we have to wrap it up soon because we are going to be talking about. That's why I leave the segues to Richard. We are going to be talking about Anna Kasparian. I think we're going to be talking a lot about the Young Turks and where they're headed, but we're going to do that today. But one thing about it that's interesting, yeah, you mentioned how Trump can do no wrong, and I saw I may have mentioned this on a previous show. It was like a week ago. Trump there was a report that Trump is going to continue to arm Ukraine, but push for some sort of deal, which again is my concern also with Israel. He'll be like, yeah, do what you have to, but make a deal. Um, and that's going to be great. I mean, look, the better, the more Trump does the good things that he promised and doesn't do the bad things that he promised, the more pro-Trump shows we're going to end up doing here. But yeah, it's going to be very different from the pro-Trump stuff you get from the Young Turks. We are pro-reason, pro-reality, pro-capitalism, pro the West when the West is fighting wars that it has no choice but to fight. And yeah, to whatever extent the leadership, any leadership in the West does that, we are for them. We actually, as I remind us and everybody quite frequently, well, I bought into Biden and Blinken's bullshit in the days after October 7th and believed that they are actually, that they actually saw this as it was a wake-up call for them in a sense, and they were going to support Israel. Of course, they supported Israel when Israelis were slaughtered, and not when Israel did anything to prevent that from happening again. So we're gonna enjoy seeing them go into back into the woods or wherever it is they're going. Anyway, parting thoughts, Daniel, before we talk about Anna Kasparian.
No, I can't wait. So
Yeah, Daniel has a lot to say about it. So that's gonna be an interesting show. Make sure you tune in. The reality show starts in a couple of minutes. Thanks, Daniel. Thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you on the reality show.